respite, I'm afraid, for cash-strapped motorists, especially if you drive a car that uses petrol. 93 octane petrol, I hope you're sitting down for this decrease. It's come down by a whopping 1 cent. Diesel is slightly better for those who drive diesel, coming down fairly significantly. It's a decrease of just over 73 cents for diesel drivers. Now, this should, in theory, mean lower transport costs as well. So let's find out if this decrease is actually going to extend to the consumer. Let's now bring in, always wonderful to have economist Professor Jannie Rossouw joining us this morning. Hello to you, Prof. Good to have you on ENC. And I want to get your thoughts in a moment about the oil price going through 2,000 in a moment. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about this fuel price decrease. Do you think it's going to have an effect for food prices, thus food transport?
Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to the viewers. The decline in fuel prices, and if I say decline, I mean a general decline, because in Gauteng there's a small increase for one grade of petrol, but the general decline is of course positive because that will help to alleviate inflationary pressures in our economy. Fuel has a direct impact on the inflation numbers, so any decline in the price is positive, and it will of course help to alleviate pressure on the budgets of households. We will have to wait to see for possible feed-through effect to other sectors in the economy, for instance, through lower transport costs.
But that's always interesting, isn't it, Prof, that when the fuel price does jump, even a little bit or significantly, when the fuel price goes up, we see that knock-on effect on food prices very, very quickly. But I don't really ever get the sense that when it comes down, we actually see a relative reduction. Or am I being too critical?
Well, we have to look at the whole food basket if we focus on food only. And food, of course, has a very long supply chain from being produced on farms up to the point where we buy it in shops. So to expect an immediate drop in prices with that long supply chain is perhaps not realistic. However, you are quite right in saying that suppliers use every opportunity to increase prices as a result of increases in fuel prices. So it will be necessary to look at individual foodstuff over a period of time to see whether at least price increases became or prices started increasing at a lower rate than before as a result of the lower fuel prices.
Prof, are you able to explain why we've seen this decrease now? Because there's often a misunderstanding between the rand and US dollar, when that is the dollar strengthening, the rand weakening, or the rand strengthening and the dollar weakening. How do we try and decipher that indicator? Because that has a knock-on effect for the fuel price as well. Never mind the oil price, which we'll get to in a moment. Just explain how we got this latest reduction, because it's quite a significant drop for diesel, but not so much for petrol.
Well, the important components are the international price of oil, the international price of petrol, the international price of diesel, and the exchange rate of the rand vis-a-vis the dollar. And I must underline vis-a-vis the dollar because fuel, petrol, diesel, and crude oil, these components are priced in US dollar. So if the rand weakens against the dollar, the domestic fuel price will increase. If the rand increases against or gets stronger against the dollar, the domestic fuel price can come down. But at the same time, of course, if the dollar price of petrol, diesel, or oil, if those prices go up, there will be upward pressure on fuel prices in South Africa. So it's a play-off between international prices of fuel and the exchange rate of the rand, and a stronger exchange rate of the rand against the dollar will always be helpful to get lower fuel prices in South Africa.
Prof, and I hope you don't mind me asking you, just in closing, I know you and I are talking about the fuel price decrease and what it means for the cost of living and the cost of food, but I do want to get your thoughts, if you don't mind, Prof, on OPEC coming out with this announcement that they're going to be cutting back on supply of oil as well. We're seeing oil having jumped 8%, I think it's since yesterday as well, and it's going north of previous numbers because they have now cut supply, which means demand is going to go up, which means the price is going to go up. So I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, Prof, that we're going to see a fuel price increase in the near future. Would that be correct?
Yeah, well, we have to remember that OPEC is on the other side of the equation. We want lower fuel prices. We want lower oil prices. OPEC, of course, being the producer, would like higher prices. So OPEC would try to get a higher price of fuel by making an attempt to control demand. My personal feeling is that oil will be at more or less the current levels throughout 2023, that we will not see the very high levels that we've seen before COVID-19, or even the elevated levels in the price that we've seen recently when the war between Russia and the Ukraine started, but that we can expect fuel prices to remain around the current level. As you've said, 10% up, 10% down, but not as high as before. And perhaps that explains why OPEC is trying to protect the price of crude oil at the current level.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, Prof. Thank you very, very much. It's always good to talk to you. Help me understand what's going on. As I was looking yesterday as well, Brent crude futures up 43 cents. It's basically 0.5% day-on-day trading on Brent crude as well. We'll bring you those numbers a little bit later, but it's always good to have economist Professor Jannie Rossouw joining us. So a slight, ever so slight decrease for petrol users as of today, and diesel drivers having a much happier day, coming down at just over 70 cents a litre